Ravin Jesuthasan, futurista, autor y líder global para servicios de transformación en Mercer. Modera, Alejandro Anderlic, director senior de Asuntos Gubernamentales para Latinoamérica en SalesForce.
Buenos días a todos. Ravin, can you hear me well?
Yes, I can, Alejandro.
Amazing. Thank you for being here. Well, let's keep hacking the context together. We keep talking about future of work, right? But the future is here and it's now. The fourth industrial revolution is all around us, and technology may become our best ally to help us be more human, to help us amplify our humanity, to help us make our lives easier. And the pandemic has accelerated digital transformation and has proven that technology may help us work easier, communicate easier, learn easier. So, based on that context, Ravin, what is your diagnosis of the current situation of organizations, and what would be the main challenges that organizations and we as workers and individuals are facing?
Sorry, Alejandro, did you ask me a question?
Yeah, let's hack ourselves.
Because all I can hear is the Spanish translation.
Oh, so, well, let's continue hacking ourselves. We will make it the other way around. Can you please switch Ravin's translation to English?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks.
in brief, let's bring together fourth industrial revolution and pandemic. What is the diagnosis you would make around organizations, and what would be the main challenges that organizations and we as workers and individuals are facing?
Great. So if we can just bring up the slide that I'm intending to use. So assuming you can see the slide, I think that the best way, Alejandro, to capture this is, Satya Nadella said in June of 2020 that we have seen a 2-year trend in digitalization get realized in 2 months. And I actually think what we've seen with the future of work is far more profound. It's more like a 20-year trend that has been pulled forward in the last 2 years, because it's the combination of both digitalization and this other more powerful force that we call the democratization of work. So our growing ability to decouple work from its traditional confines of space, time, and structure. And if we can maybe go forward a few slides. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. And I think at the heart of what we are seeing, Alejandro, is a fundamental pivot in companies having not just a focus on driving growth, efficiency, and return, but a much more robust focus around resilience, flexibility, and agility in order to be able to withstand shocks like the pandemic and be able to be more responsive to the growing progress of both digitalization and the democratization of work. And there are 5 things that underpin this focus on resilience, flexibility, and agility, as you can see on this slide. One is certainly a more portfolio-based approach to work that encompasses employees in jobs, employees in more agile ways of working and automation, much greater agility in business models so that talent can flow to work more seamlessly, much greater decision-making from the edges of the enterprise where threats like the pandemic are most acutely felt, the edges of the enterprise where digitalization often has the biggest payoff, the edges of the enterprise where innovation often starts. Fourthly, ensuring that we're thinking beyond ourselves. We have so many great examples of companies that collaborated during this pandemic, and we're seeing that extend over the course of this post-pandemic period, if I were to call it that. And then lastly, and Alejandro, I think certainly something that your organization is a very big player on, this pivot to Web 3.0 and the metaverse. and what that might actually mean for the future of work. But I think for HR leaders and for business leaders, the great dichotomy that we're going to need to continue to navigate is what you see on the bottom of this slide. This trade-off between employees and workers continuously looking for certainty and stability, particularly when we have shocks like the pandemic. But for private companies, the best we can do is the promise of clarity for a changing world, and the promise that we will keep that workforce relevant for that changing world by upskilling and reskilling them so that their skills are relevant and they're able to be economically sustainable and viable in the new world of work.
So based on this diagnosis, Ravin, and thank you for that, the pandemic has somehow forced us to do things a different way. And we keep saying that hopefully we will come out better of the pandemic. We would have learned something out of this. So how could we take advantage of this crisis that we all lived to make like a reshuffle and a reset in the way we work and the way our organizations operate?
Yeah, Alejandro, that's a really good question. And, you know, we've spent a lot of time thinking about this and looking at not just where we've come from, but what are the markers of where we're going to. And if we go to that next slide, I think there are two fundamental questions that we as business leaders are going to have to grapple with for the next 10 years. One is, how do we redesign work to enable talent to flow to it as seamlessly as possible, while ensuring that that talent has the right signals and the assets and resources to enable its perpetual reinvention? Our business models continue to change and evolve rapidly, and the work of our organizations also needs to do that, and our people need to continuously reinvent themselves. Are we supporting them on that journey? And are we ensuring that they can connect to work as seamlessly as possible? So I think that's the first question. The second key question is, how will we re-envision the talent experience of work, whether that talent is an employee, full-time or part-time, a gig worker, you know, whatever it may be. How do we re-envision that experience so that we can meet more and more people on their individual terms and not force them to try to comply with our one-size-fits-most solution? You know, the tip of the iceberg, Alejandro, is this whole debate and discussion about remote work and hybrid work. And our good friend Elon Musk had some interesting comments to make a couple of weeks ago. But I really believe, and I said this on CNBC last week, the genie is out of the bottle. We are not going to go back to working in the way we were in 2019. And businesses that think that they are going to be losing that war for talent. So the question is, how do we re-envision work so that more and more talent can engage with it, again, on their terms? And as I often say to my clients, it's not flexibility if it's not a choice. And if our talent is placing a big premium on flexibility, and we see that in survey after survey, how do we ensure that we fully understand what it is they're looking for and craft value propositions that are fungible and flexible for all segments of the workforce? So I think these two questions, Alejandro, are probably the most pivotal challenges ahead of us.
Thank you, Ravin. And as a futurist, bringing the future to the present, what examples and best practices from organizations that are tackling this issue the right way, I would say, can you share with us to inspire us?
Yeah, absolutely, Alejandro. If we jump to the next slide, when my co-author John Boudreau and I wrote our most recent book, Work Without Jobs, what we started to see were organizations fundamentally changing the way they operate. Organizations fundamentally stepping back from the way work has been done for the last 150 years, this notion of that one-to-one relationship between a person and a position, or a job and a job holder, to looking at the many-to-many relationships between skills and work. and companies looking for ever more agile ways of working, where work is increasingly done through other means. And we proposed a new work operating system that is based on not jobs as the currency of work, but skills and tasks. And you can see the 4 principles that underpin this new work operating system. I would suggest 2 examples of organizations who I think are really blazing the trail on the future of work. One is my good friends at Unilever. I think Unilever has been a bastion of progress in the future of work for quite a few years. They launched their framework for the future of work in 2018. And the whole rationale for what they've done was to ensure that as their business model evolves and changes, that there are signals to how people work every day that are continuously being sent, and people having the opportunity and asking the questions of, how do I upskill for the role that I'm in today, because that role is going to change? How do I reskill for different ways of working? Or how do I outskill for opportunities beyond Unilever? That framework has since manifested into its use of the Gloat internal talent marketplace, where in 2020, at the height of the pandemic, they had close to 40,000 people take on projects and assignments around the company in more agile ways of working. And then more recently, what they call their UFlex program, which allows people in all walks of life to connect with the work of Unilever increasingly on their terms. If I am a parent who is returning from paternity leave and I don't want to go back to a full-time job, I can take on projects and assignments and gigs with a stipend from Unilever. If I'm a retiree that is looking to transition into retirement and I want to work for a certain amount of time, I too can engage with Unilever. The idea being that wherever you are, whatever the seasons of your life, there is an opportunity for you to contribute to our mission and for us to engage with you productively. So that's one example. The other organization, Alejandro, I think that is, again, blazing a trail is Standard Chartered Bank, which has done some amazing work, not just to increase the agility of its internal work, but ensure that as certain bodies of work are sunsetting as a result of automation, and other bodies of work are sort of sunrise work, as they call it, that they have clear pathways for talent from the work that is being sunset to the work that is, in the sunrise category. Equally, ensuring that their mission extends beyond the walls of their organization to empower women in sub-Saharan Africa and in India to own their financial destiny, to support them with development, with financial resources, etc., so they can be empowered to sort of manage the finances of their family. So again, we're starting to see a couple of organizations just as an example, but there are so many others who I believe are on the same journey and continue to advance towards a far more equitable and inclusive future of work.
Thank you, Ravin. So my last question would be, there are around 1,000 young of mind leaders with us today here, and others listening to us remotely from places all over the country. So what piece or tip of advice would you give to each of us to start doing with little by little steps that reshuffle in the way we work? What can we start doing right now?
I would say 3 things, Alejandro. I think the future belongs to those who can reinvent themselves. The future is predicated on 3 things. Curiosity. I think each of us has to be really curious, not just about what we do in our domains, but the ability to look around corners, the ability to sort of to see connections between what I do in my work and the work of someone else, what I do in HR and the work of finance or accounting or marketing. So to see connective tissue, I think that curiosity is really important. I think the learning agility, to be continuously looking at opportunities to acquire new skills, the ability to continuously want to be able to learn and develop ourselves, and then also the ability to take calculated risks, right? I think that's really important. Playing it safe and staying in our narrow zones and areas is not going to be the key for success, because we know that those two forces of digitalization and the democratization of work are going to continuously challenge the work that all of us do. And so we do need to take some risks to explore, to experiment, to try new things, and recognizing that we have to fail fast and learn and move on. In the many speeches I give, I often talk to accountants, and I've talked to the CPA associations in the US and in Ireland and in Australia. And one of the comments that I've made is, if you just pick on the profession of accounting, right? We are going to see more change in accounting in the next 5 years than we've seen in the last 500 years since the advent of the double entry bookkeeping system, because of the progress of those two forces, digitalization and automation and the democratization of work. And so how do we ensure that if I have a set of technical skills around accounting, that I keep reinventing myself, that I can find a pathway from accounting to maybe it's going into forensic accounting, maybe it's going into application development, maybe it's going into different areas of analysis where I'm less and less defined by my technical skills and more defined by my enabling skills that are the key to keeping me relevant for a changing world.
Thank you. So leaders, let's stop complaining and putting the context as an excuse to keep growing, and let's take the context as an opportunity to grow and to reshape ourselves. Big round of applause to Ravin.
Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you all.